Hey there everybody and welcome back. This is a really quick interactive video basically walking you through the basics of an API, what it is and how it functions. We're going to be using AppGyver, which is a free codeless development resource, as well as Firebase, which is a NoSQL database. So we're going to cover the basics of APIs in this video. So before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. All right, so we're going to jump straight in. I have this article here, which I'm going to go through very, very briefly just to touch on a couple of things to know, and I will put a link to this in the description. So this is over at the Postman website, which is a common tool for testing and working with APIs. And you'll see right here, it's an intermediate software agent that allows applications to communicate with each other. So you'll see more detail about the different types, what they are. You'll often hear about REST-based APIs, SOAP-based APIs. There's tons of different options to learn more if you're interested. But let's cover the basics. So APIs are all over the place. So you'll see them pretty commonly when you're really doing different types of things on the internet. And if you don't really know, or if you haven't seen them in the past or heard of them, if you right-click on a page and you want to click Inspect, if you go to your network tab, you'll see all the different things that are happening when you're running on different websites. Often you'll see different API requests running just by accessing websites on the internet. So let's jump through the basics here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to test a post and a get, and we're going to cover the different methods. So using AppGyver, we can use this little logic node here, and I have a video to basically cover the basics of this if you want to learn more. But we have this section over here. So the first part of the API is often going to be the URL. This is just like a website. You can't see the content of the website or get it if you don't know where it is. So you would specify your URL. Then you specify the method. Are we getting data, posting data? Are we doing a put, patch, or delete? These are the different methods. I'm just going to cover get, post, and delete for the most part in this video. So get is very simple. It's basically saying go to this URL, get the information, return it here. Sometimes you may have some information that would be returned. Sometimes you may need some inputs like headers, request body, or request body type. But often you're going to be seeing something like a JSON payload, which is just the information being returned. So in this case, let's see what a GET request would look like. This is a chat app that I've built. I've actually set it up for free so you can download the AppGyver files over at codelessfix.com in the codeless apps section. There's a free section you can download stuff. So this GET request is going to check on profiles in this area of Firebase. So we have a collection, which is kind of like a folder, and then documents, which are kind of like subfolders, and in those there's content. So in this case, this application, I want someone to be able to go and see if this username is available. If I click check availability, you'll see it's taken, and it actually exists right here. So what we're doing when that button is pressed is we're doing this GET request, and we're checking this URL. This URL is the exact same as if we were to check. What we'll do is we'll update it here just to show you what I mean. So this URL is checking, instead of profile details, it's checking profiles, and then it's checking for really whatever we are searching for. So in this case, it's checking for a specific username. So here's an example. It's doing a GET request to this URL if we were to check for the numbers 1, 2. So let's delete a couple of these and check for 1, 2. You'll see it's taken because it exists right here. And in this document, we have this data. And that is what appears right here. So we're just saying there is data here, that name is taken. Now, what if we check for something that isn't, like the letter A? If we click check availability, you'll see it's available because it checked in this folder and there's no letter A. So now what we're going to do is called a post. So we'll bounce back and forth between windows just so you can see the document appear pretty quickly. So we're going to click set and jump over here, and you saw it blinked pretty quickly. And then we have the document. So let's go over to our set username and we'll check the logic. So we're posting to the exact same URL with one modification. We're adding in this part here. So if we go to this URL, you'll see what we've done is we've effectively just added on this part here. And what that's doing, if we were to cut this off, is it's saying add in this document and then add in whatever the page variable is for the username. So what we effectively just did is added in the letter A. Now, we did not just access that URL though, we did send a payload, or we did send some information. So we used a post method, and then we did not use headers, but normally with headers, you would be able to specify things. For example, you may often see something like authorization, and then you would have something called an API key here for security. Or you may have values where you would specify the payload, the request body type, all kinds of things. And then you have the request body itself. So what you're sending, in this case I'll send a formula, is something like this. It's typically encapsulated in brackets, although they can get much more complex when you deal with arrays and objects and things like that. But the idea is what's located at this URL here is all of this. What applications do is we tell them we need to know the fields. So the username is this value. That way the user doesn't have to see all of this other stuff. And basically it's just saying we need to see this value here or this value here. So in this case, you'll see we have something like this here. We have the username that's checked and then it's displayed here. We have different pages that are available. And the data that we're sending, we're structuring it in the same way that we're getting it. So we're saying fields, username, string value. We're basically saying, here's all the data. And then when we get the data, we will clean it up. So you'll see what I'm sending is the exact same bits of information. I'm just allowing the user to specify here what that username is. Now, to give a quick example of getting that information, we're going to check on the profile details. So you'll see we can go to get collection, and let's run a really quick test. So you'll see if I run this collection, I get this giant bit of information here, which is doing a request to this URL. So we'll compare side by side very quickly. So I'm going to paste this in, and then we'll grab the other half of the URL. And then we have to make sure that we remove the slashes. So now we have the same information. You'll see this is going to be identical to the results that we just got here. Now you may wonder, how do we clean this up? In AppGyver, you have something called set schema from response. So now it breaks things down into categories. You have your fields, your usernames, you can find your example data, and then if you ever need to use this in an application, let's say you need to get that piece of information and maybe store it somewhere, then what you can do is something along the lines of maybe you want to set some kind of a variable in your app so it can be stored. Well, if you want to see an example of how that would work, you would say if we're doing this request here, we want to set some kind of internal value and we want to assign it to something. So if we check on something like what we just set, you'll see when we clicked set schema from response, we had create time, fields, username, and you'll notice as I click on each of these, we're seeing the values off to the right for those categories. So for example, if I click on this, you'll see the entire call. But if I click on username, it knows, okay, get me what's in that username field. And in this case, we have username, and it's returning what's to the right of it, which is right here. And then you'll see again, you can scroll through and see the different options. So that's really all that I have for this high-level overview. Again, this is just the very basics, so you can feel free to do some testing over in AppGyver. There are tons of tools and resources over at codelessfix.com, and I have other videos on my channel if you're interested in learning more. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.